Well, good morning. Start the meeting off here. Today is Thursday, February 1st, 2024. Prior to calling the meeting to order, I'd like to ask any Transportation Committee members who are calling in by phone to identify themselves. As a reminder, if a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a specified location on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. The meeting of the Transportation Committee is now called to order. Larry, would you mind leading us in the pledge?
Please join me as we salute the flag that represents our republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Excuse me, Chair. I'm sorry, I thought it was Chair Sandoval. My name is Adele Andrade Stadler. I am the representative for Region District 34, and I'd like to, at this time, invoke just cause for my absence there. I understand that I have this right, and that I have to explain to you that I am immune compromised until through March of 2024, and that is a reason for not being there.
President has to authorize it.
I'll
Mr.
move
Chair.
to permit her attendance.
Mr. The President of SCAG has the authority to authorize that. And I do hereby authorize it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. Okay, we're going to wait a couple. We're going to try to stall a little bit here because we're still waiting to get a full quorum, right? All righty. So I'll go ahead and read the rest of this. We are holding this meeting in compliance with Brown Act rules relating to telephonic and video conferencing meetings. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. A reminder to reduce the background noise, please ensure that your microphone is muted when not in use. I will now open the public comment period of the meeting. This is the time for members of the public to offer a comment for matters that are within SCAG's jurisdiction but are not listed on the agenda. Staff, have we received any written public comments after the deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, January 31st, 2024?
No public comments have been received, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none here. Do we have any on the remote locations with raised hands? Okay. I will now close the public comment period for matters not listed. For matters not listed on the agenda. All right. I'd also like to remind everybody to unmute your phones before speaking and state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. For those who've joined by phone, press *6 to mute and unmute your phone.
Now we can do it. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, we're going to move on to the consent calendar. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on the consent calendar? Okay, none here. How about on the any virtual no raised hands? Okay. In order to save time, if anybody wants to pull anything from the consent calendar, I ask that we have staff presentations before moving to the roll call vote for the consent calendar. Okay. Mr. Navarro, see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, Chair, I would like to move the consent calendar.
Second, Nazarian.
Okay. Nazarian seconds.
Adele Andrade Stadler.
Yes.
Constantine Anthony, Catherine Barger, Elizabeth Becerra,
Yes.
Brian Bergson, Russell Betts,
Yes.
Daniel Brotman, Art Brown,
Aye.
Jeanette Burns, Ross Chun.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Ross Chun, Denise Delgado, Andrew Doe,
Morning.
Jonathan Dumitru.
Hello, this is Andrew Doe. Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, aye. Yes, I vote, please.
Thank you. Your vote is received. John Dutre,
Yes.
James Gaisley,
Aye.
Jason Gibbs, Kurt Hagman, Jan Harnick,
Yes.
Laura Hernandez, Lauren Leslie Hughes, Heather Hutt, Fred Jung,
Fred Young, aye.
Trish Kelly,
Yes.
Linda Krupa,
Yes.
Bridget Lewis, Malcolm Lilienthal, Richard Loa,
Yes.
Clint Lorimore, Ken Mann,
Yes.
thank you, Steve Manos,
Aye.
Ray Marquez,
Yes.
Larry McCallan,
Yes.
Marcia McLean,
Yes.
Tim McOsker, Dennis Michael,
Yes.
Carol Moore,
Aye.
Ara Najarian,
Yes.
Maria Nava Frolik,
Yes.
Frank Navarro,
Yes.
Sharona Nazarian,
Yes.
Gil Revelar, Ed Reese,
Yes.
Celeste Rodriguez,
Aye.
Crystal Ruiz, Ali Saleh,
Yes.
Tim Sandoval, Suli Saro, Zach Schwank,
Yes.
Marty Siminoff,
Yes.
Jeremy Smith, Ward Smith,
Yes.
Jose Luis Salache,
Yes.
Hilda Solis, Wes Speak, Karen Spiegel, Cynthia Sternquist,
Yes. Here.
Steve Ty,
Here.
Michael Vargas,
Yes.
Scott Voigt, Donald Wagner, Colleen Wallace,
Yes.
Alan Wapner, Thomas Wong, Jeff Wood. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion passes 33 in favor and 0 against.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Laura Hernandez. I was unable to attend this morning, and I'm not at an approved remote location. So I'm just observing this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Clint Lorimore. If I could register an I vote.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Received.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to information items, quick build projects. So I'll call on Rachel Aum, Senior Regional Planner, to provide the presentation.
Righty. Good morning, Transportation Committee. My name is Rachel I'm a Senior Regional Planner at SCAG, leading active transportation, and excited to be here today to share about quick build projects. So I'll be providing a brief overview, just explaining what quick builds are. And we've got a very exciting presentation from Margot from LADOT to talk about a recent project. Clicker may not be working quite yet. Sorry, one moment, having a little trouble with the advancing slides. I'm not sure. Oh, the mouse keeps moving. Can I get this one work? Okay. Oh, somehow when you clicked it, it worked, but not for me. All right, he's got the magic touch. All righty, so just to start off with defining a quick build, the California Transportation Commission defines as an interim capital improvement project. Kind of more approachable way to define this is you can think of as a near-term pilot project that uses low-cost materials that are relatively easy to install and uninstall. So this graphic on the slide kind of shows a spectrum of projects where on the left is a very temporary demonstration project, maybe just using some signage and some paint to show a type of design, maybe for a few hours or a day. On the very right-hand side, it's a more permanent installation that involves much more construction, maybe pouring some concrete, and just is a much longer process. So quick builds fall in the middle, a pilot project or interim design, again, using those low-cost materials, which I'll get into in the next slide. So getting into the elements of these low-cost, easy to implement or easy to uninstall elements. So if we look at protected bike lanes, you can put that protection either with planters or parking or using plastic posts. If you want to input a traffic circle using rubber curbs, again, plastic posts are very handy for various types of projects, also using signage. For a protected intersection, can use paint and plastic posts to create curb extensions, inputting temporary pedestrian refuge islands, or using pavement markings. Also, there's temporary transit platforms and also interim shared spaces such as pedestrian plazas using barricades. So on the screen on the right, there's an example from the city of Long Beach on South Street. The top is the before. There are 2 lanes of vehicular traffic and curbside parking. And just with some paint, the city was able to implement a parking protected bike lane. And outside of the photo, they also installed curb extensions using paint and plastic posts and upgraded their crosswalks to be high visibility. The quick build process starts with extensive community engagement and also to understand existing conditions and what are the community priorities and challenges along a specific corridor or project area. All of this engagement informs a quick build design, and then a jurisdiction will implement the project. It can range anywhere from a couple days to maybe a month or 2, depending on the scope of the project. After implementation, a key part of quick builds is to have evaluation. Evaluation can take place anywhere from 1 to 3 years post-implementation. And really the goal of evaluation is to inform next steps, whether it's modifying the project, removing the project, whether due to the actual materials, just kind of reaching their end of life, or going through a process of refining that design and maybe getting a permanent installation. And that process typically takes 1 to 5 years. So another example on screen is in the city of El Monte. They implemented a quick build roundabout. So you'll see that the intersection is a bit challenging, 5 approaches at a stop controlled intersection. And so the city's piloting a roundabout using plastic posts, rubber curbs and signage. And just from the kind of street view, you can see that intersection has just a lot of open space, but with this roundabout, they're able to fill that space and kind of help direct traffic. So the city is in the process of implementing that, and then we'll, after about a year, we'll undergo evaluation. So my last slide for this introduction, just wanted to share some of the projects that are going on in the SCAG region. So we've got a few that have been completed in Beverly Hills, Calexico, Hermosa Beach, Long Beach, Los Angeles, and Ojai. So I wanted to show some more photos, a little more interesting to see them rather than just talking about them. So on the top, city of Ojai, they use planters to create a parking protected bike lane. And this is informing an ATP grant application for them to figure out what their final design should look like. And on the bottom, in the city of Calexico, their quick build is a pedestrian plaza where they blocked off a street with some barricades, and then also partnered with the Bloomberg Institute to input some street art to really activate the space. Again, as mentioned, we've got a few in progress. So the photos I showed of El Monte, we also have projects going on in Pasadena and Glendale. And then finally, projects that are in progress and upcoming for installation as they're currently in the design and outreach process in the cities of Pomona, Los Angeles, and Santa Monica. So now I'll turn over to Margot to talk about a more kind of process for city of Los Angeles.
The magic button.
It's that right one.
Okay.
Yep.
Excuse me. Good morning, and really an honor and a pleasure to be here. Purposely wore red. It is a gray day out there, and I see a lot of black, so I want to make sure I stand out. So welcome, everybody. Hope to keep you on your toes for the next 15 minutes or so. I am the director of Safe Routes to School for the city of Los Angeles. I also oversee our program for Neighborhood Enhanced Network. So at the core of my existence and my profession is really calming streets to match the context of the land use and the environment around us. So use the speaker, of course. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through some of the steps to put a quick build project in the ground. Its duration from start to end was about 18 months. And the biggest takeaway that I want to leave with you is that a quick build is a really valuable opportunity to trial and be innovative, to get a project in the ground expediently, and also expose your engineers and your other staff to ways of engagement that are a bit unique, and I would say at the end of the day, fun. So what I'm going to do is talk through the concepts and the engineering plans that folded into this project. We did a pop-up event, which I view as a very robust engagement tool, as well as I'll share the innovative tools that we were trialing as a part of the project and ultimately dive into the engagement. So first of all, to put this in context, in the city of Los Angeles, we have about 840 public schools, LAUSD schools. And in 2014, council adopted a Safe Routes to School prioritization, which meant we ordered all of those schools from most need to least need. We secured an ATP Cycle 1 planning grant, which allowed us to work with the top 50 schools to meet with them, understand their concerns, and create a infrastructure safety improvement plan. The map shows that the school that we're going to zero in on is Young Oak Kim Academy, which is one of those top 50 schools. And we started working with them in about 2018, and they are ultimately now the recipients of a quick build project. So in 2018, we met with the school community, and like most other Safe Routes to School walking audits, it's all about listening. What are the issues? What are the concerns? And then our engineering team takes those issues and problems and translates them into a set of recommendations that we then, our goal is to submit this plan for an ATP infrastructure grant. Now, along the way, Caltrans opened up the quick build cycle. So in cycle 5, in advance of our submitting this full plan for an infrastructure grant, we decided to pull out a sub-element of the plan and submit it for a quick build application. So what you see on the screen in that oval is actually the block in front of the main entrance of Young Oak Kim Academy. And we opted to submit that portion for a quick build. For those of you that probably are familiar, if you're parents, that the pickup and drop off zone is chronically the most painful part of a school zone. And the reason we selected a quick build application for this area is that in my role as director of Safe Routes to School, and as I learned more about these school zones, simply planting signs and education to the parents was not enough to change behavior. And so we really viewed quick build as an opportunity to think outside the box, call me a little crazy, but trial some things because it was quick build only, and learn from if redesign is fundamentally the way to change behavior. Punchline, the answer is yes. So what were the issues that we were dealing with on Chateau Place, which was where the school's main entrance is? So the school is on the right. On the left side of the street, we have the headquarters for a union organization. We have a lovely cafe. We also, at the end of the street, have an apartment building with over 500 units. So the primary client on this block is truly the 800 student population. However, through the process of engagement, really got to know all the diverse stakeholders. But what are the issues? Well, hopefully this looks rather sort of noir, but our black and white of Chateau Place, couple key issues. One, it's a 50-foot wide street with some decaying striping. So basically it's a 50-foot runway for anybody to travel how they wish. So there is southbound traffic, northbound traffic, and a central lane, which has been used as parking for parents when they're waiting, for the delivery trucks when they're annoyed with the congestion, and multiple other uses. Many parents were observed doing U-turns as they were coming off of the school curb, turning around and heading the other direction. Likewise, a lot of dropping of children on the other side of the street from the school, doing U-turns, and a whole mishmash of vehicle behavior, and 800 kids exiting a school made for a bit of a mess. So we did some concepting. And what you're looking at, and one of the things to drive home about a quick build process, is build time and I guess time and labor into going through multiple iterations, because some of the joy of quick build is kind of iterative concepts. This is the one that we landed on. This is our third concept plan. And in brief, I guess you would call that a peachy color. We basically took out the parking lane on the west side of the street, which is right in front of the school main entrance, and converted it into a pedestrian plaza area. We added a yellow, the yellow represents a dedicated pickup and drop off lane. So it operates only during pickup and drop off times. It is not a through lane. And then subsequently a southbound lane and a northbound lane. To again, put this in context and think about why we're gobbling up street space to use for more pedestrian use, is that of the 800 students that are at this middle school, we did a student travel tally. Over 60% of these students use transit or walk to and from school. So you think about that and you go, well, that's a fairly large population that is out there twice a day. And yet that 50-foot width of street is solely dedicated to vehicular movement. So how do we find a better balance between the true use of mode use on that street? And this was the design that evolved. In addition, we were testing out curb extensions on the north and south ends of the block, but pretty excited about this plan, as well as doing some additional greening. So I'm going to walk you through several of the elements within this quick build project and why we were doing them. So as I mentioned before, we're talking about a really wide, kind of unorganized 50-foot with street. The idea was to streamline, organize, make more predictable those vehicular movements so that when the kids came flooding out of the main entrance. So what you see is a double white line, which is indicating the exterior barrier of the future pedestrian. I'm sorry, where the orange cones are is the pedestrian space. The double white line indicates the valet lane. And then we restriped the double yellow line. Again, we took our vehicle lanes from 12 feet down to 10.5. So ultimately, we ended up with 27 feet of vehicle space as opposed to 50. To reinforce where the vehicles go, we applied vertical delineators along some of those striped barriers. So you'll see that the pedestrian space, which has the yellow polka dots, also has a vertical barrier, as does the barrier of the dedicated valet lane. So once somebody is in a dedicated valet lane, they are not leaving it, should somebody be a little bit slow at the front of the valet. And similarly, something new, we actually put yellow vertical delineators down the center line. It was really important to mitigate all of that unsafe U-turning. And what this does not represent, because it just went in yesterday, was we have actually strung yellow plastic chain all the way down the center lane over those delineators, again, to mitigate students getting dropped on the other side and trying to cross between the delineators. Similarly, we have strung the edge of the pedestrian space with a white chain. Also, a great opportunity to pilot something that we in the city of LA have not done, perhaps some of your other cities already have, which is to install speed cushions or speed pillows, a quick and easy way, basically AKA instant speed hump. So good exercise in trialing those. We had 3 rows of those installed in the block. Here are great crews at work installing the curb extensions. Generally, they are done with striping and some vertical delineators. We opted to also color them in with the same color of our pedestrian plaza for another punch of color on the corridor. And in the spirit of punches of color, it's one thing to do your pedestrian plaza below the curb. Again, that's sort of a quick build way of grasping and installing a plaza. We said, why not run some of that colorful design up over the curb and onto the sidewalk? So we stenciled a fun design on the sidewalk, which also connected with the yellow dots on the pedestrian plaza. And lastly, maybe I'll go back a minute. It's hard to see in any of these pictures, but along the sidewalk where this pedestrian plaza are, there are a series of about 7 very stunted orange trees. And if we're thinking about the bigger context of what we're trying to change on the street, we're looking to change the context and the feel and the attractiveness and the invitingness. So we had those stunted orange trees replaced with quite large shade trees, which will then provide shade onto the pedestrian space. I referenced some of the plastic chains, and then those concrete clouds. Those small seats will be interspersed along the sidewalk in the pedestrian plaza. So those are the elements and kind of the components of the physicality of the project, and wanted to just shift and focus on the engagement. And I've noted here some of the events that we did, and I wanted to call a distinction between the word quick build and demonstration, which sometimes we use the word pop-up, meaning a demonstration, as Rachel called out, very much something that's like 4 hours to 12 hours to maybe 48 hours. And I view that as an engagement activity because it's a 3D exercise in feeling, testing, experience, observing, evaluating, and feedbacking on the future design, versus the quick build is what actually gets installed in the ground and could last 3 months to 3 years to 5 years. We were very fortunate that we already had a relationship with the school because we had been doing this larger infrastructure planning exercise, but we really embedded ourselves in the school. We attended a family festival where we wanted to solicit some art ideas for the pedestrian plaza. We had coffee with the principal so we could reiterate this, that the street will change. Please be prepared. We also worked with the student government. There were about 50 leadership students for the school. And it was really important that they use their vernacular and their words to promote the project and get the school ready for the installation of this redesign, because it meant a change in behavior in the way that the parents are driving, and parents don't want to listen to other adults. Maybe they'll listen to their kids, and maybe the kids, being middle schoolers, can influence each other. So they would make announcements. They helped at the demonstration event. They even made a video that was very blatant about how drivers are to behave when the redesign opens. And I'm incredibly proud of them with the video. So this is that family festival. We got all sorts of ideas about what colors, what shapes, et cetera, to help inform the design for the future plaza. We hosted a pop-up event, and a shout out to SCAG. We used your Go Human kit of parts. So you'll see the parklet example sitting there in the future pedestrian space. And we trialed it, as you see in the lower right-hand corner. We trialed running people through the dedicated pickup and drop off line, and have to admit that it went quite smoothly. So we ended up installing this project during the months of December and January. And looking at today's weather, I'm so glad we got in before these atmospheric rivers arrived. It took us approximately 7 days of work on the street to do the transformation. But as I mentioned before, it's just as critical to engage all the stakeholders, not only the school. And I will tell you, it was challenging trying to find out how to connect with those people that are not in the school community. And nothing like throwing up a road closure sign, or at least sending out a notification sign that your street will be closed for a portion of time, that people come out of the woodwork. And there's a lot of no, and I'm not happy about this, and what are you doing? However, it was a really valuable opportunity to everyone take a breath. Let's frame why we're doing this, the data of how many students are walking or using transit, the speeds on the street, the volume of traffic. I have to say, I was really pleased with the way that all these non-school stakeholders really came around. And I think the other thing to remember is, I mean, one of the first questions you ask is, well, are you happy with the status quo? And invariably it will be no. And so the quick build really is that great opportunity to say, status quo not working, great. We may not have the full solution, but let's test it, tweak it, observe it, evaluate it. If it's a mess, we'll pull it back out, but we have learned. But why stick with a status quo that doesn't work? In January, after the field crews had put things in, we had actually had the leadership students had a contest to see who could actually go out there to help customize those yellow dots with faces. So that was a fun day. And this is the street before, and I don't think the video is going to launch. This is the street after. And in the spirit of evaluation, I'm happy to share, it just got texted to me last night because we just got the data, but there was literally a 50% drop in the number of cars that were going over the speed limit. And the max over the speed limit dropped from close to 40 miles per hour to 29 miles per hour. And in the first day of opening this, I have to say, there was no honking. I think the principal was sort of gobsmacked at how organized the street was. So kudos to all of my team. It truly takes a village, but pretty impressive in, takeaways. So I have a couple key takeaways, and am I on time? Okay. Couple important takeaways, and that's maybe it's on the next slide. There we go. So I think, as I mentioned before, really be prepared and build time into staff time and budget for iterations to happen with the concept, because your community members will look at it, your engineers will look at it, everybody will have a take, and that will inform how the concept changed. This is a great opportunity to do things a little differently. We put in those speed cushions. I strung plastic chain down vertical delineators. We put vertical delineators on a center line. We put colorful paint on top of the street surface. These are all things that have not been so comfortable in our toolkit, but again, because it's poised as quick build, we have the opportunity to trial it. Invest time. Do not run your project all the way up to the end. In the sense, build your budget and your labor time so you can be back on the site observing after it's installed. We learned so much by doing a pop-up day. And we've also learned in the 2 to 3 weeks after the project was installed, move a delineator or tweak this or tweak that, or just being on site to hear your community talk to you. That's probably the best part, is because it's new and people are moving more slowly and they're curious, you can hear those inputs. If you throw it in and then disappear, you kind of lose out on how the experience is going. So make sure you consider that in your budget. Get creative in your communications. Engagement is so important. Like I said, we had so much fun tapping the middle school students, social media, making a video, notification flyers, and also just being on the street. And I think lastly, have fun. I know we all take our world very seriously. It's all about safety, but projects like this, if you imbue them with some color and some creativity, people get excited and it feels more hands-on than pouring concrete. So take advantage of the opportunity, bring your engineers to site, have them participate with the students, have them come to your pop-up days, have them come to when the field crews are out there. Really invest in getting everybody involved in the success of the project. And that's it. Happy to take some questions if there are any.
I've got one final slide. Just want to say thank you again to Margot for sharing this example. I hope it's inspired you in thinking about your community's opportunities to just really address safety and get some projects on the ground. And it's really a mechanism to then think about what can permanent installation look like. So with funding in mind, I just wanted to give a little look ahead for ATP Cycle 7 that's forthcoming, several opportunities for quick build funding. So the statewide call for projects, which will kick off in March. The state has up to 7 million available for quick build projects. Just want to note, as you think about projects for the statewide call, it does require a call with the CTC, state CTC staff prior to submitting your application. And then coming to the region, there will be a regional call for projects where any of those state applications that do not get funded will be reviewed in the regional call. And then SCAG will have the Sustainable Communities Program call for projects. We are working with each of the county transportation commission staff to develop the guidelines and figure out what that would look like. So it'll be an iterative process to develop that process. So thank you again for learning about quick builds and going through this example. As Margot noted, both of us are available to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It was a great presentation.
I'll just add that this project was about $250,000 if you're trying to wrap your head around general costs.
Thanks. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? All right. Then we'll go with the people in the room here. We'll start with, which one's that over there? Suli.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilwoman Suli Saro of Long Beach. And Margot, thank you so much for, Margot, right? Sorry, I just want to make sure I heard correctly. Thank you so much for the presentation. I love this demo project. You know, in a time when we have such high alarming rates of traffic fatalities and accidents, it's so hard to provide education because it's really changing behavior. And I've been working with some of my community members and groups on this concept of safe passage is no longer about walking, but it's the drop-off pickoff. As a parent, you know, I try to follow the process, but nobody knows. It's always chaotic every morning, even when I bill in cushion time. So, you know, I'm curious. I love that the students are engaged in the process because they're really the educator and really reminds parents to follow the rules and the process, but it really requires setting up kind of that lane and that process for the parents to do so. So I'm just curious, I know it's just maybe you're just getting results in, but how does that change the parents' overall behavior to maybe not just follow the rule, but also know that, hey, I have to maybe make time to kind of go through this path because that's why they don't follow the rules. They're in a rush. So they want to cut, they might want to make a U-turn.
No, fair question. And I think in these beginning days, I'll just say that one of the objectives, and when we submitted our quick build application, the hope was that we were testing a design that we may be able to scale. Because I think, to your point, it's chronic. These pickup and drop off areas are really difficult. And so was there an opportunity to develop a template that we could potentially scale? So with regard to, and presentation is up, but there is that dedicated valet lane. And we hosted that pickup and drop off as a pop-up day. So for one dismissal period, we tried it. And there were some bumps. And so we learned whether we should make it longer or shorter, et cetera. So that was why the pop-up day was valuable. And then ultimately, I have to say that we've seen people using the valet, the number of people getting in the valet increase. It might be because we're dealing with middle school kids who are pretty quick to come and go out of a car, but that valet lane moves so smoothly and so quickly that there isn't any reason not to get in the dedicated lane. So it's kind of sold itself. And again, this is not something you can do at all elementary schools, but having been there yesterday, they don't even need staff managing it anymore because we've made it very clear that as you drive through the dedicated drop-off lane, when you get to the top of the plaza where the sign says enter, exit here, they know it and they're coming and going. So it really kind of operates on its own now. So, but I think doing all that aggressive communication, all the video, the social media, the announcements on the PA system, like doing all of that helped get people ready for it. So
thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Next one will be Thomas Wong.
Thank you. I appreciate the work that you're doing at this school site over here. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's like, where's that voice coming from?
No, you answered one of my questions in terms of about $250,000 in terms of the cost. Was that mostly borne by the city or split between the city and the school district, or how?
So this ATP grant, we were able to secure a consultant through our pre-qualified bench, and I'd say 70% of that budget went to them, and we put the onus of procurement on them. So we tapped our field crews who do striping and delinear installation, but we had a bunch of non-standard products like the concrete cloud. Some of those delineators weren't standard, the plastic chain, the endurable, some of that's not necessarily standard. It would have taken forever to get through our procurement process. So again, that's why we are able to move so quickly in 18 months from true beginning to true end of the project, because our consultant just picked up the phone, cut checks, procured stuff, and we're off to the races.
No, I appreciate that. That's helpful. This is very timely. I appreciate your presentation today. Just last week, got an email from one of the principals of a school in my council district in Monterey Park, wanting to work on improving drop-off and pickup designs around the school and can make some of those improvements. So would love to connect and
absolutely. Maybe I
educate
should
them
start my own job. School design guru. Anyway,
yeah, it would be great to it'd be great to be able to scale this, right? Even 18 months, I think, for parents and teachers who are looking for a quick build, that's still not very quick.
But I did want to touch on, as far as the school district, again, I was somewhat in an advantageous position having, as the director of the whole program, I've had a very close relationship with LAUSD. And so what also was helpful is that they have a unit within the district called Office of Environmental Health and Safety. It's kind of their traffic safety gurus within the district, and they have staff assigned to every school. So it was really critical that at every meeting that OEHS rep from LAUSD was there. So that gave the principal comfort that we weren't guerrilla planners and going to get her school in trouble with the district. So.
Cool. No, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next is Colleen Wallace.
So that was a good presentation. I just have a question regarding roundabouts. Have you did any data about how many accidents occur in roundabouts?
I am not going to be able to speak data-wise. I will simply say, in the spirit of doing pop-ups, and again, I make a distinction between a pop-up being that one-day engagement activity, that we bagged a signal and popped up a roundabout on a block adjacent from a school. And we saw, again, I brought 40 engineers out. We all stood around for a day and watched big trucks, buses, kids traverse around and through the roundabout. And our senior signal person had said, this is a significant improvement over a traffic signal. I wish I could quote you on the data. It's not my duty to do so. But in the right context, I think they're really valuable. Okay. But you need the right of way space, because right of ways do really force you to pull crosswalks back. And if you don't have that right of way below curb, it may not fit. So
thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Next would be Linda Molina.
Thank you. I apologize for my lateness today. I came from Riverside County.
In all that rain.
What I love about this project is, as a grandparent who raised 8 grandkids from elementary school through high school and was in every drop-off lane for all those years and all those kids, it's harder to teach adults than it is to teach children.
Oh,
so
yes.
what I liked about this project is the visual.
Yes.
It covers language barriers. It covers grandparents versus parents dropping off kids who are harder to learn rules and want to following the rules. So it's the organization is and functionality is so fantastic. It's a great solution to an age-old problem. Kudos, many kudos to you. This is a great project.
Well, thank you. I think, as we know, we are challenged putting up signs that say no stopping, no parking. It's until you fundamentally organize the street differently, even though our audience isn't really the vehicles. We want the audience that are the non-vehicle people, but we got to put the vehicle people in order and predictable and organized in order to change the context for those that are not in the car.
I like the idea of the kids telling the parents what to do as well. I think
do
that's
too.
great, because they follow directions a lot easier than the parents and grandparents. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next would be Supervisor Hagman.
Thank you. I think it's an excellent demonstration of the pop-up and the quick project. But I'm more curious that, what have you found out after you get this in? This was a major thoroughfare that the rest of the time now has to deal with slowing down. So how's that affect the neighborhood traffic? Really, we seem to cater to our schools that are there for 6 months out of the year, actually in use. The other 6 months are not. And for 2 time periods of the day, the drop off and pickup, that slow down. But for the other 20 hours a day, the other 6 months out of the year, how's that impacted with the parking, with the neighborhood? What kind of, we go through these traffic studies to say, this is the speeds of the street, this is the parking we need for our infrastructure, that we do this type of project. How, in retrospect, I guess you're able to track it over time. What's the thoughts of the disruption of the normal other neighborhood lifestyle?
Such a good question. Yes, you are correct. We are designing for a select population at a select time of day for a select set of months. Still, that select population of students takes up a chunk of time of the year. I think initially that's why, as we were closing the street and people finally decided to look at the design, i.e. the non-school community stakeholders started looking at the design, that there was initially a lot of, no, I'm not supportive. No, I don't like this. However, I go back to sort of my initial comment is, well, are you happy with the status quo? And what I heard was, during the school time, it's a mess for me as well. They're blocking my driveways. I'm concerned for the safety of these kids. It's chaotic. On the non-school times, it's in the dead of night, this wide open block becomes a racing channel and people are out of control, and there's a cafe that's open until midnight. There's also in the element of bringing shading, so the replanting the trees in front of the school. We put in additional trees on the non-school side, so for some future shading, and just we're all dealing with climate change, so trying to cool the area, and trees also help with the air quality, et cetera. I think the goal was to have them understand that we're trying to change kind of the vibe of the street. And because of the large apartment building, because of the cafe, because the people who are coming regularly into the office building, that resonated with them. And so they actually came around to that. And even the bus drivers, so there is a bus depot at one end of the block. So a large city bus is constantly traversing the street. And even the bus drivers who I've met in the depot parking lot and said, how are you feeling about it? And they're like, I love the fact that this street is so predictable. So regardless of when I drive down it, it's going to operate the same way. In the past, I didn't know what I was going to be turning into. So I'm not going to say that it's always going to be rainbows and unicorns all the time, but this particular design ultimately did resonate regardless of whether you're a school or a non-school stakeholder.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the online folks. Russell Betts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to say good presentation, but that's an excellent presentation. Great job. You've sparked a lot of interest here in our city. I'm hoping that we can get a copy of that presentation sent out to the everybody. Would like to draw on that. I had one quick question. Do you have a problem with parents in that, what do you call it, the valet lane? Maybe the kids taking too long to get out of the car and holding up the line?
Fair question. I think I'll be very transparent. I think one of the advantages, we're working with middle school students, so they're a little bit more agile. They're not necessarily, hopefully they're wearing their seatbelt, but they're able to get in and out of seatbelts a little bit more expediently maybe than elementary school kids. But I have actually been surprised at how quickly they come and go from the car. And your question reminds me about another important part of kind of notification that we gave to our student leadership as well as the student principal, which is it's changing the culture in the sense that a student that is due to get in a car needs to get themselves to the pedestrian plaza so they can queue to get into the car in the afternoon. It works like the airport. If the car is there and the passenger isn't, you got to circle the block. So your kids need to line up. And again, we were, I guess, advantageous to be working with kids while their lobes haven't totally sealed. I have kids myself. At least they got it a little bit more quickly. Within the second day, and partly because the principal for 3 days or 4 days after the project opened would announce right before dismissal, if you're getting in a car, get yourself to the plaza, don't dawdle. So again, there was some retraining of the muscle, but those kids fell into line real quick. And I was also surprised because maybe we provided notification that we had to send some parents around the block. Hey, I'm glad you're here. You're going to have to go around the block. Johnny isn't here yet. And what I've learned and also observed, because I've spent a lot of time down there, is parents have changed the timing as when they're showing up. Before the street was redesigned, that center lane became a parking lot and people were triple parked on the other side of the street waiting for their kid. And then it was like the apocalypse. The kids came out and it was like all over the street. Now, in the initial days, there was a bit of a queue as people were waiting for the valet lane to open, but now parents are just coming a little later. I think they're getting on the phone with Johnny and saying, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Make sure you're at the plaza. So change can happen. Sorry, that was probably a longer answer than you needed, but
I just want to again say excellent presentation. And if you would like to come down to our city as a grandparent facing that mess you've been describing on the before, you're certainly welcome to Desert Hot Springs. So thank you.
okay. Ooh, that sounds inviting. Thank you.
Thank you. Adele Andre Stadler.
Yes, it's Del Andrade Stadler, councilwoman for the city of Alhambra and former school board member for 14 years. So I appreciate your work with the schools. We know that students excel in our schools when they feel safe, and when we invest in our transportation areas to keep them that way. Well, kudos for you. So back in the day, you probably hate that term, everybody does, we did our program, or our valet program, utilizing the police department because they would have to give tickets, right? It was horrible, it was brutal. But our parents were letting kids cross in between cars to get to school on time. So you can see why we were, so we created our valet program, and then we had the student leadership, which you mentioned, the older kids in our elementary, which were 8th graders. They assisted our CSEA members with that valet program, helping kids out of the car. Just FYI. I want to thank you so much. Alhambra's in the middle of our sustainability plan, as well as our bike and pedestrian safety plan. This fits so well into it. We've had so many meetings at our schools because we have 13 elementary schools in Alhambra Unified School District. 4 are in Monterey Park, as Councilman Vice Mayor Thomas Wong mentioned. And they're critical for safety. They're all over our city. We're only 7.4 square miles. So you can imagine our traffic. But I want to thank you for really going to the real heart of our city, which is our children, our schools, and making sure that areas are safe around them, and that we can do some really innovative things. The city of Alhambra did a pop-up with Active SGV for one of our bike lanes that we're looking at to connect South Pasadena and also the city of Los Angeles. We're sort of nestled in there, right? We're the gateway to the San Gabriel Valley. And so we're connecting with it. And it was actually a pop-up that gave us the data to go through with what we were doing there. In addition, it's near one of our schools. So I want to thank you. I also want to connect with you. I've already texted our staff and said, hey, we have money, but we need more money when it comes to this. So I want to thank you so much for all your hard work. And I'm familiar with that school, that area, because the Union is right next door, right across from there. And so I frequent that place very often. So thank you very much.
Take a stroll on the plaza when you come back next. So yes, and I just wanted to add, and I might be speaking out of turn here, but one of the things to keep in mind, because school zone, there are always more elementary school than middle schools in a district. And I know that I talked about the advantages of working with middle school students who are a little bit more independent, but I also piloted the first safety patrol program in the city of Los Angeles, which to your point, Adele, I worked with a school to train the 4th and 5th graders to staff the valet lane.
Yeah.
So again, one of the challenges in valet lanes that I've heard, at least in the city of LA, is I don't have school staff, and the parent volunteers are great for a week and then they don't show up. So as a way to institutionalize change and culture within a school, there's an opportunity to develop a program where it's basically a leadership program. It's where a select set of kids are taking on that role of the valet to assist with opening and closing the doors to keep that valet lane moving. So something for consideration.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I'm terrible at butchering names. So if I get your name wrong, I'm very sorry. Next will be Sharona Nazarian, and we have 3 other hands up online where that'll be it for the conversation. Sharona? You have to unmute.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Sorry, I couldn't unmute quick enough.
There are two things that you mentioned that I think are extremely important. The first one is the educational component of it, changing the behavior of the mindset, kind of the culture. And you mentioned seatbelts. I remember when we were very young, we didn't really wear seatbelts until it started to become a new phenomenon that they were really pressing in the schools. Now, if you get into the car, it's unheard of if somebody's not going to click it. And I think that is extremely important. And you brought it up a couple of times. The other aspect that I had a question about, we've been doing a lot of this. I'm Sharona Nazarian from the city of Beverly Hills, councilwoman. And we've started implementing a lot of these different ideas for street calming and various efforts. With regard to communication, as much as we sent out flyers and notices and tried to get out, there were still constituents that were very unhappy and how dare you put these on our streets and what are you doing? So what recommendations do you have as far as the outreach and making sure that everyone is aware and understands the process? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your question. And just to clarify, are these projects, the ones that you're referencing that there's some negative feedback on, are these non-school projects? In other words,
they're non-school projects. I mean, we have
Okay.
the schools as well, but there's non-school that are just in our residential streets and other areas. And people are like, why did this show up in our streets? Nobody even bike rides.
Well, I bike through Beverly Hills, just to let you know, and I always enjoy my ride. So thank you. I will share that again, highly advantageous to have a quick build project that is really dedicated or focused on a school because you have a captive market. So you're able to tap all the internal communication networks that are already established with the school community. But as I referenced, I was a little challenged in trying to your point, how do I get the owner of the cafe? There's this like big union building. Where do I start? The door's locked. There are a bunch of other buildings. I don't even know where the front doorbell, if there is a front, like, is anybody in these buildings? So as I learned, the street closure is one way to get people out. And then you just have to put your nice Teflon on and be a really good listener and say, yes, tell me everything that you don't like about the project. And when you're done, can I talk? So the other thing that's helpful, again, I realize this is school centric and I'm not quite sure how to modify this for the non-school community, but because we had the data that said, I can't argue with the fact that 60% of 800 are not getting in a car. So why do we need all of this space just for the car? I know that in the general public, those numbers can be hard to get. This is where I go back to maybe the value of the SCAG Go Human pop-up kit. There is something about having an event day where you are, because flyers just don't get to people. So when you put something in the roadway, they're going to have to interact with it. Now, again, not everybody in the neighborhood may end up coming out in the day that you do a pop-up, but it's certainly a lot buzzier than a flyer. If a pop-up is not an option, then it may be a situation of partnering with a middle school or a high school that is somehow connected to that neighborhood, and it becomes a student project. And you work with those students to get on their social media, that you give them the task of like, if you wanted every household in this neighborhood to know that a change was coming, how would you do it? You would be, well, you probably wouldn't be surprised if you have children or if you know kids, they're pretty darn savvy. So if you give them the bar is here, go let everybody know, what's the best TikTok that you could do that would let them know that something's happening, or you tell all your friends to tell you their parents, who knows? I also think one of the things that if I had more time, but I'd love to tap our local media. Why don't we have like the television crews, instead of going to all the crashes, why are they not coming to here's a feel-good story, which I know doesn't tend to sort of draw as many eyeballs, I've been told. But local television, we got local radio stations, somebody reporting from the site, hey, there's a change coming to the street. So I come from a marketing background in technology, so I don't know, maybe it's my marketing brain, but I think there's still opportunities for our realm in the transportation world to get a lot more creative, because I am with you. I do not want to take down another tree to send out a flyer that's never going to make it out of a backpack or end up in a gutter. So.
Marco, could I add to that? Sure. I just want to add to your question, just thinking more broadly for just general engagement outside of school. So with the quick build projects that we have going on now, as I mentioned, that process, there is an engagement component. And so that can include doing a walk audit. And so maybe people can get involved in that. But I think a really key component is to have a community advisory committee. So you'll have folks from different, whether it's a school or different community-based organizations, and just having, and also engaging with the business improvement district. So really trying to go to all those different organizations. And I think as many of us have experienced, there'll always be a stakeholder group that doesn't get the message. They just somehow miss that information. I think that's inevitable, but we're really trying to acknowledge in this quick build project process, and also broadly with planning projects, to have that multifaceted engagement approach through different avenues.
I'll just build off of Rachel's comments that please make budget available to stipend people to participate, if you can, in these advisory groups. In this day and age, I think it's onerous to ask community members, bids, and others who have bottom lines to worry about to volunteer. So if there is a way to stipend them for their time, and if you set expectations of, I would like you to join this, which we've done on a SCAG project right now, bring your network. One of the reasons that you're being invited, or we'd like you to participate, is that you have your own networks. And one of your roles as a community member is it is not for a one-way information session, but you are an active participant in being a champion for the project. You will have input as to the shape of the project, so you are comfortable promoting it, but that's your role. So just to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you. 3 more hands raised. Is it possible that the people with their hands raised right now could follow up with questions to staff? Because we're running a little long on this item and we'd like to close it up.
I'm good with that.
I just have a brief comment. It won't be very long.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Najarian.
Yeah, thank you. This is Ara Najarian from the city of Glendale. And I just want to throw a word of caution out there. As an attorney for almost 40 years, you have to be a little careful with the design and the imagination that you put into these quick builds. The further you get away from the uniform manual of traffic control devices, the more you start to lose your governmental design immunity to leave you open for lawsuits. Should there be an accident around one of these new imaginative designs. So be very careful as you go to these things that are further outside the box. Please consult with your city attorney when you get to those things, because it could end up biting you in the rear. And thank you. That's all I have to say.
And I'll just add, because it was a slide that we removed from the presentation, in the spirit of being attentive to that issue, there is an engineer signed and approved geo design. So this is not the back of a napkin getting put out there, but this is run through the rigors of our geo design and our signaling team, and all fully signed and approved. So we have that Teflon against any future issues.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much. Great presentation again. We're going to move on now to mobility hubs. Number 8, call on Priscilla.
Hi, I'm gonna share my screen.
Oh, perfect.
All right.
Good morning, Chair.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to do the introductions first. I'm Priscilla Friedrich. I'm a senior regional planner in the Mobility Planning and Goods Movement Department. So sometime in October, I was here to share with you SCAG's Mobility Hub strategy, which we're developing as part of Connect SoCal 2024. And as part of that presentation, I shared what SCAG plans to do more work leading to potential pilot implementations in the region. And so at the meeting, the committee directed staff to share more examples of mobility hubs pilots. And I would say that while there are a lot of planning work going on related to mobility hubs in the nation, there's not a lot of pilot implementations. But today we're lucky to have Gracia White from City of Boston to share on their Go Hubs, City Go Hubs pilot program with us, which will include some of those lessons learned and hopefully will help us as we look towards mobility hub implementations in our region. So Gracia, please go forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so inspired by the previous presentation. It's hard to follow that up. But yeah, let's talk about mobility hubs. So what is a mobility hub? I'm sure many of you all have heard about it or have a clear kind of idea of what it is. But the thing is, everyone thinks they know what they are. Everyone has their own definition. So Minneapolis has one, San Diego has one, LA has one, and even across the pond in England, they have their own definition. But there are some common themes. So the main thing is that these are spaces to connect people to transportation options and enhance a space through placemaking amenities. To beautify the space, to kind of anchor it and kind of add some vibrancy to it. So what can they look like? Well, there's also a lot of variation there as well. So what, like if you can close your eyes for a second, like what do you picture when you think about a mobility hub? Maybe something like this image can come to mind. And this is kind of like a perfect world scenario. The side, like look how wide the sidewalks are. This is a very shared road. There's cars, there's bikes, there's buses. So this is also like mixed use. You have the commercial and then there's some like houses in the back. But things look different in the real world. So this is actually an example of one in Cambridge here in Massachusetts. And it's not branded as a mobility hub, but once you know what to look for, then you start seeing them everywhere. So you have the mobility options. So that's a bike share station there in the back. There's the benches, there's the information kiosk, and then there's a bike path behind the benches. And there's even, the trash can and the lighting. So that's one example. And they can also look very low tech. So you might be looking at this and wondering, what the heck is this? Is this a bus stop? And it is a bus stop. And again, once you know what to look for, then you start seeing them everywhere. So that little corner has a seating spot, and this is covered. This is a covered waiting area. There's an information like the bus schedule, which is a lot more than I can say for a lot of our bus stops, honestly. There's also a bike facility. So that's a bike rack, and it looks to be, pretty well used. There's also a trash can, and then there's this gorgeous, amazing tree that's providing shade, providing cover from the rain. And all of this is along a high frequency bus route. This is in a very, very small town in the middle of Austria. So again, they can look very high tech, very low tech, but it's all about just providing essential services to people. So what I really want to get across is that there is not a one size fits all. So as you all look to create your own mobility hubs, please remember these are going to look very different, even, neighborhood by neighborhood, city by city. So don't be afraid of that when you're designing them, as long as you're conscious of the land use, of the needs that people are expressing, then you should be okay. But again, don't be overwhelmed by how different they can look. So now going into our pilot here, we produced a guidebook, and that's a resource that you all can definitely take a look at. It includes different typologies. So we separated mobility hubs into 3 different parts. There's the gateways, there's the squares, and there's the points. So gateways are kind of like the gateway to a neighborhood. These are areas that are very busy. There's lots of activity. There's commercial use. There's residential use. And the squares are kind of a little bit deeper into the neighborhood. There's still some activity, but not as much. And then the points are very embedded in the neighborhood, and they're typically away from, like major transit corridors. We also developed a kit of parts. Again, this is also available to you all. And this is kind of a menu of all the different amenities that you can have. And if you take a closer look, for example, these are separated between mobility options like the EV charging, the bike share, the bike parking, and then also, again, the public, like the placemaking amenities like public art and parklets. And this is also, like bike parking can look very different. You can have racks, you can have secure bike parking, you can have cages, you can have bike rooms. So even within this like kind of limited menu of options, there's still a world of possibilities. And then of course the branding. This is very much up to you all. Like we chose these colors, but whatever colors resonate with the neighborhood that you're, building them in, or even like city branded colors, that could be nice as well. So we focus on a neighborhood called East Boston. This is separated from what I call mainland Boston. We have the Boston Harbor in the middle. So this neighborhood can kind of feel like a little island, honestly. In blue, the blue line represents the subway line, and the yellow is a high frequency bus route. And then the green lines represent the biking facilities in the area. So these are all the 8 locations we spread throughout the neighborhood. And I want to draw your attention to the very top, Eagle Hill. That one is one of the ones that I said is like very embedded in the neighborhood. Yes, it's along a high frequency bus route, but there's not much else around. It's mainly just homes. So please remember that one. And then if you look all the way to the bottom at Porcio Park, that one has even less. So it's just a park that's nearby it, and just homes. And then on the other side, you have the airport. So here's the quick overview of all the amenities that we added. Again, it's a mix of active mobility, some car use amenities like the car share and pickup drop-off zones, and then a mix of placemaking amenities. So even within the 8 Go Hubs that we installed, all in the same neighborhood, they each look different. I really want to drive that point home. This is an example of an actual Go Hub. This is Maverick Square, which is confusingly a gateway Go Hub. And there's a very popular subway stop here, and there's a lot of bus activity. Here we installed the bike share, and then we have a bench, and then we had some planters installed. We also added some car share spots and some wayfinding information on the light posts that you can see, and then some pickup drop-off zones. So this pilot, took place in 2021. So the community outreach for it happened kind of in the height of COVID. So unfortunately, we were kind of limited in what all we were able to do. But one really useful thing we did was conduct a community survey in partnership with a local organization. About 400 people were surveyed on, what is it that you would like to see? Like, what should we be adding? What should we be focusing on? And what we learned was that people were very interested in the placemaking amenities. So the parklets, the community spaces to have farmers markets and, like a food truck park. And the things that they were the least interested in were the mobility things like the car share, the EV charging. So that was kind of interesting. And this is kind of helping us guide our work moving forward. But yeah, focusing more in on the lessons, we primarily used data from our bike share network and from our car share usage to evaluate the pilot. So we would have liked to use pedestrian counts or bicycle counts. However, we just we just did not have that data. But I think going forward, if you all were to have your own mobility hubs, I think that could be really neat data source to have. But here the lesson was that at the stations where, you know, they were farther deep in the neighborhood. So again, the ones that I pointed out to you before, Eagle Hill and Porcio Park, those had the greatest percentage increase in the bike share system. And these were not near any subway station. So it kind of makes sense intuitively, you know, we added more transportation options to an area that had very little transportation options. So it made sense, like people just, you know, started using them right away, which was nice to see. And yeah, so again, these were brand new stations. And as far as like the car share aspect of it, overall in Boston, we saw car share numbers decrease across the board. So reservations went down, miles went down, both in the Go Hubs and the overall city. And then the number of unique users also decreased. But if you look deeper, Eagle Hill, again, that very embedded neighborhood Go Hub, actually saw an increase in the number of car share reservations. So again, this makes the case for focusing on those like neighborhood places, you know, because we also saw upward trend in the miles driven, both in Eagle Hill and Porcio Park, and then even in unique users. So Eagle Hill saw an increase, but the other one, Porcio Park, while it did see a decrease, it was less so than the other ones. So really want to emphasize that, you know, as you're looking to develop your own mobility hubs and you're reading and you're like trying to, you know, source information on how to plan for them, something that you'll often come across is that mobility hubs are often anchored by a train station or a high frequency bus stop. However, while that is important, we also cannot forget the other parts of the city, you know, like how are people getting to these places? So providing things like car share and bike share in those, you know, like quieter neighborhood streets is also very important. And additionally, yeah, we will be prioritizing, you know, adding more placemaking amenities like planters, and these are painted blue, so I would like to see more color maybe going forward, and even including other things like shade canopies. The previous person mentioned climate change. We're dealing with that obviously everywhere. Boston is not exempt. And then in terms of signage, this is a signage we added, but it mainly focuses on pointing people toward the nearest transportation options. So going forward, we would like to include other things that are equally important for urban mobility, such as public restrooms. This is a very kind of hot topic a little bit, you know, but they're very important, as well as other resources for people like libraries and health centers. So that's something else we'll be including moving forward. And then in terms of the branding, this is the branding that we have. It's very simple. So maybe going forward, we include like little icons or something to, you know, just make it more visible to people of what they can expect at the Go Hub. This is an example of one that I've come across. So just, I don't know, there's different variations that you can use. So yeah, moving forward, I think, you know, we have an RFP we're putting together, and they're going to help us with community engagement, installation, operations, and maintenance. Like the previous person said, it's very hard to procure items. So working with a consultant is quite helpful, especially as you look to purchase items that are not standard. So purchasing like those, I forget what you call them, the cloud concrete seating benches, those are super fun. So if you want to include some of those things, then yeah, it definitely helps to work with the consultant for that. And then again, in terms of locations, we really want to focus both on, yes, the hubs located along major corridors where there's a lot of activity, there's like Main Street districts perhaps, but then also the neighborhood hubs. So one way we're thinking about it is that for every one corridor hub, there will be 2 neighborhood hubs to help support it, you know, to help bring people to it. And then also, you know, looking at what else other city departments are doing and how we can piggyback on their efforts, what other initiatives are going on. And that is all I had. So I hope that was helpful, and I am more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Thank you. I will now entertain comments from the members of the Transportation Committee. Just a reminder, if a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe but not participate in any discussion of the body. Does anybody want to make any comments or questions? Was it? Sylvie Sorrow?
Thank you. I just have one question about, thank you for your presentation. It's really informational about, you know, how you're doing this pilot. You know, how big of a concern is it in your area around using bikes? Because it's always been a safety concern around encouraging alternative or micromobility usage here anyway in Long Beach or in other parts of Southern California. Was this an issue as a barrier in encouraging people to kind of use the mobility hubs or bike shares?
Sure, yeah, and I think that goes back to how each one is going to be different depending on your city, and again, depending even in your neighborhood and the overall context. That's something that we run more into whenever we want to install a new bike lane. There's always pushback because, you know, loss of parking or whatever reason. But as far as installing bike share stations, that was not really an issue. Also, like installing new bike share stations is mandated for, you know, larger development complexes. So people have kind of gotten used to them. Thankfully, again, that was not an issue, but you know, it doesn't have to be bike share. Like maybe you just add car share if that's something that people are expressing more interest in. I think the overall goal is just to provide more options.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. We have no more questions or hands raised. We're going to move on to number 9. Advanced Air Mobility, AAM update, AAM 101. We're calling our senior regional planner, Hiroshi Isakawa.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Vice Chair, Judge, and Honorable Transportation Committee members. Today, we have the pleasure of finding out about Urban Airport, which is an international advanced air mobility company, infrastructure company, by the CEO and founder, Ricky Sandu. Ricky, a quick technology check because Ricky is actually zooming in from the UK. Ricky, are you online right now? Ricky, you might have to unmute.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. So I just want to give Ricky an extra thanks because I think it's about 11 p.m. his time. But before I turn things over to Ricky, I just wanted to provide a little context as to what advanced air mobility is and where we are in terms of the overall planning and regulatory framework. So when we talk about advanced air mobility, or AAM for short, we're talking about moving people and cargo, air cargo and goods over local and regional trips. And what distinguishes advanced air mobility from traditional forms of air transportation are the shorter trip distances, as well as the use of new technology, including electric vertical and takeoff and liftoff aircraft, and eventually autonomous aircraft. But it should be noted that the first passenger advanced air mobility flights will be piloted. The autonomous passenger AAM aircraft are still further on down the road. And it's also, I think, important to distinguish, but we have had a few test cases of package deliveries via drones. But it's also important to note that, you know, the knowing recreational drones you see when people are filming and surveillance drones, that's not advanced mobility. So mobility is the key point, is that it's moving people and goods. So as far as the regulatory framework is concerned, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, is taking the lead in terms of the certification of AAM aircraft, as well as regulating the National Airspace System, which is already crowded airspace. And the National Aeronautics and Space Administration is taking kind of the first stab at establishing a general operating framework. Now, although the FAA and NASA are taking this kind of the lead in terms of regulatory and national operations, it will be local and county governments that will ultimately be making the decisions to invest or not invest in AAM infrastructure, including the vertiports that Ricky Sandhu will be talking about today. So while, you know, the first advanced mobility aircraft will most likely fly from existing airports to existing airports, so general and reliever airports to larger commercial. For instance, there's already been work done at Van Nuys Airport and flying from Van Nuys Airport to LAX or Burbank. Those were, and so those kind of fall within an existing framework in terms of airspace and land use, because they would be on airports and covered by airport authorities and airport land use commissions. But what I think is especially important to local governments is that the long-term vision of advanced mobility includes landing on mobility hubs, passenger stations, transit stations, bus stops, and even from the top of buildings and parking structures. So this will have an impact on local, county, state, federal infrastructure, because you're getting into existing transportation modes, you're getting into the electrical grid, building safety standards. So there's a lot to weigh, you know, especially when you're thinking of investing in advanced mobility infrastructure versus traditional investments such as bus and transit lines. So a critical role that MPOs, including SCAG, are playing is to kind of facilitate this coordination and collaboration and information sharing efforts across jurisdictions, between agencies, levels of government, and between the public and private sectors. So as part of this effort, SCAG will be scheduling presentations from the FAA and other AAM companies at future Transportation Committee meetings. So Urban Airport, which is the name of the company, is the first of these many presentations. So at this point, I'm going to lead into introducing Ricky Sandhu, but I will refer you to the staff report that you'll find in the agenda packet for more information. And please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions, or if you'd like to be put in contact with the FAA or Caltrans Division of Aeronautics. So I think, you know, what a good way to introduce Ricky is that, as I mentioned earlier, a critical piece of the AAM planning and operations will be the construction of vertiports. Now, vertiports and vertipads are where AAM aircraft will take off, land, and recharge. And so this is new technology and an infrastructure, and it will require new construction. For instance, existing heliports as is will not be able to accommodate advanced air mobility aircraft. So they'll require either a major retrofitting or complete reconstruction. So it's, at this point, it's very important for, I think, you know, local governments and county governments and state and federal governments to get good information as to kind of what this vertiport infrastructure is about. So I think, you know, Ricky would be a great person to talk about his company, because his company specializes in vertiport and other advanced air mobility infrastructure. So at this point, would you please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guest all the way from England, Mr. Ricky Sandhu, founder and CEO of Urban Airport. And Ricky, just like I said, I think just when you need to advance to the next slide, just say next, and our AV person will advance them for you. Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here this evening. And actually, Hiroshi, it's only 7 p.m. in England, so it's not too late. And it's funny, you know, I find myself sitting here exactly where I was sitting a few years ago when I first met Mike Whittaker with our partners at Hyundai Motor Group and Supernal. And Mike's now he's the administrator at the FAA. So so this industry has gone from being an idea to a really serious industry that's really going to help cities all around the US and around the world be connected better. And our goal at Urban Airport is to enable that new form of sustainable aviation to happen, and also to happen viably and sustainably, but also safely as well. And so before we kind of dive into the presentation, it's probably worth, just explaining, who I am and why am I qualified to have such a business. And I think that kind of stems back all the way to my training as an architect. So I used to work at a company called Foster & Partners. It's one of the world's leading architectural and design practices. And I spent a lot of time designing buildings, super high towers, high-speed rail stations, airports, master plans. And, I left that practice, sadly, because I really thought, we spend a lot of money on our buildings and there's a lot of innovation in our buildings. But what if we spent that kind of, that quantum of cash, for example, the Bloomberg building in London was £1 billion, right? And so what if we spent £1 billion or $1 billion US on the bits in between the buildings? And so that's where we became very passionate about investing in the bits in between the buildings and enabling them to support sustainable net zero and emission-free types of transportation. And so Urban Airport was formed to enable one such form, which is advanced air mobility and electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. If you can go to the next slide, please. So our infrastructure is very unique, right? So we have over a dozen patents that are being filed internationally. So we are not only a design company, but we're a design and technology company. So we're an IP-rich company, and that's kind of very rare in the world of infrastructure. And that's because we deeply understand cities, and we also deeply understand aviation. And so advanced air mobility is going to be the confluence of both of those. It's bringing aviation into cities, which sounds scary. And there'll be a lot of kind of people who will kind of think, how do we do that? Why are we doing that? But actually, the benefits of doing so will outnumber some of those challenges. And actually, the only way to really do it sustainably is to do it in an innovative way, right? So we can't rely on existing incumbent processes for designing airports. We all know what airports look like. They're very big, they're very costly, and we find them very noisy. And so these aircraft are actually very safe. They're very quiet, and they have a unique ability to take off vertically and then obviously fly horizontally. So can we then design a piece of infrastructure that responds to that? And that's what Urban Airport does. So we've created a new type of aviation infrastructure that enables the eVTOL and the pilot and the passengers to come in. And you can see on this image here, we've placed our urban airports just kind of landside at a kind of classic kind of US-based airport. So it's the safest place for the aircraft to land is at the elevated position. But then it's not very safe if you land up there, which is kind of 2 stories high, for passengers to disembark and board. And so what we then do is we bring that aircraft down in that central space where that current black aircraft is shown. And so what that means is the aircraft comes and lands in the most safest place to land. But then we bring it down into the urban airport, which then provides the safest place for the aircraft to be maintained, for charging, and for passengers of all types of accessibility needs to board and deboard. So we kind of bring effectively like an aircraft carrier approach onshore. And that's how Mike and his team at the FAA kind of describe us, that we are the guys who brought the aircraft carrier from offshore. We brought it onshore. And so that's one of the biggest kind of innovations here. And what that means then is we're able to fit in into complex cities and into very expensive real estate areas such as airports. And if you go on to the next slide. So you can see here that the aircraft that just landed is now kind of lower down, and that means it's now moving back into one of the hangars. And I think one of the other important things about these aircraft, like with any aircraft, is to have very close servicing capability, so that you can land the aircraft, move it the shortest possible distance into its hangar. That's where you will board, deboard. That's where the aircraft will be cleaned and maintained, and all the flight checks will be done. And the important thing there is that compactness is really crucial, because remember, these aircraft are effectively, they're effectively flying batteries, right? And so we need to make sure that we're not kind of using that energy to kind of move the aircraft long distances like in traditional airports. We want them to land. We want to conserve that battery power, and then we'll move the aircraft the shortest possible distance, so that that central landing pad, which we call the vertical airfield, is free for the next aircraft. And so what this starts to unlock is capacity. So that means we can have more aircraft with more passengers landing in a smaller footprint than any other type of solution, which then has benefits to communities, because we'll be taking up less space. It has environmental benefits because we're enabling electric vehicle charging. So this actually could be a mobility hub, because we have e-bikes, we have electric cars, we have power on site, which can be off grid with our energy partners. But then also you have the electric aircraft that are also landing elevated, so that they're not so noisy in terms of the perception of this new kind of helicopter, this new kind of eVTOL sound. But they're also very safe, because you're not having to board an aircraft in a high exposed windy location. So having this ability to integrate all the necessary functions in a very compact footprint is something which is very unique, and something which we believe is going to scale across the US and also many other cities. If you go on to the next slide, please. So you can see here our prototype. So we built this in Coventry. It was backed by the UK government with the Future Flight Challenge. We were one of the largest winners. Hyundai Motor Group and Supernal, which is their eVTOL company, which is based in 4 locations across the US, from DC all the way to California. And what we did here is build for the first time a fully functional vertical airfield. So you can see that gray platform. That's actually the landing pad. And this is actually a video, but we can't play it, unfortunately, because we're just on a PDF. So what you can see here is that gray landing pad is coming down with the aircraft on top. So it's landed at the elevated position where it's safer for everybody, it's quieter for everybody. And then we bring that vertical airfield down to where the hangars are and to where the passengers are. And you can see on this image, we've got a cafe. You can just catch the cafe on the left, and you've got retail on the right. So we had 15,000 people. We had 150 successful flights, and we were flying. We were releasing aircraft to fly and receiving them to land within a very confined civil aviation controlled airspace. So this is a fully integrated mini airport for electric aircraft in a very dense downtown city location. And this was the first time in the world that this has ever happened. All the industry stakeholders came together to make that happen. So we're really pleased that we had US support on this as well, but also that we had UK government backing. And then we opened the urban airport to anybody. And that's what led to 15,000 people, kind of, kids, adults, enthusiasts, industry. We literally opened it up to anyone who could grab one of those free tickets. And the response was amazing, because people were using the facility that they've never ever experienced before in a very normal kind of way. They were coming in, having a coffee, they were browsing some of these very cool brands, and they were giving a tour, and they were getting close up to drones, and they were actually seeing the Supernal aircraft, which you can just see at the center of the image there. If you go to the next slide, please. So you can see here on the right-hand side, that was the one-to-one scale 5-passenger eVTOL that's been developed by Supernal and HMG. So that's parked in the hangar. So that's where you would board that aircraft and the pilot will be ready. We would then open the hangar curtains. If you look at the left-hand image, you can just see the silhouette there. We will bring that aircraft into this central space. And on the left-hand image, what you're looking at is kind of the underbelly. So the platform is in the elevated position in this photo. And you can see here a lot of our technology with our electrical, mechanical technology here, which is being exposed, but it's also part of the theater. And so it's a very exciting moment where each time an aircraft comes into land or take off. But the great thing is, and the unique thing here is that it's completely isolated. So passengers will never get close to any of this mechanical equipment. You're either kind of outside or you are in the aircraft. And so that uniqueness is what enables us to be very, very compact, which also adds a lot of safety features as well, which I'm going to come on to as we go through the presentation. But the key thing is being able to do this and really reinvent the way that we build aviation infrastructure, having built airports, in the Middle East and in the UK, to really kind of change how we do it, to really kind of, think outside of the box. What we've been able to achieve is it is a vertiport that is 80% smaller than it otherwise would be. And I think that's the crucial thing, in this day and age, particularly in complex urban city locations, that compactness, not only is it better for the community, but it's also better for the cost, for our clients, but then it also means it's also cheaper and more efficient to operate. So there's so many advantages. If we go on to the next slide, please. So here you can see, I'll quickly skip over this, but you can see in the top image that we were located there next to the railway station, 60 seconds from downtown Coventry city centre, high-rise buildings in close proximity, 150 flights in a very controlled airspace. We had our own command and control centre, and we built our own vertiport AOC, which is the kind of platform where we can see what's happening, all across the airspace, but also what's happening inside the facility. So, it was like a mini airport. So, we were lucky enough to be able to design it, to build it, but also to operate it as well. So that gave us a lot of experience, which is really, really valuable as we now move on to our next generation technology. And the next slide, please. So here's a little shout out to our team, but also to Mike Whitaker, who then was the Chief Commercial Officer at Supernal, but now is the FAA Administrator. And he sees, the advantages of this kind of aircraft carrier on shore, because it's all going to be about efficiency and it's all going to be about scalability and having infrastructure that's affordable. Transport infrastructure is always very expensive. And so we have an opportunity here to, we have a very innovative new type of transportation aircraft or transportation vehicle. And so it's only right that we also work hard as infrastructure designers to serve that new technology with a cutting edge new type of affordable, scalable, safe vertiport infrastructure. And so that's what we have. And on this image here, what's also really important is, and why I'm particularly proud to be speaking here this evening is, we had national government here, we had local government, we had the city CEO, plus we had the regulators, all standing arm in arm, which really goes to show that, that regulators and innovators can work together successfully and safely, and be that kind of, leading example for other cities. So this is something that we're very excited to bring this to Southern California, where I used to live actually. So yes, if you go on to the next slide, I can talk a little bit more about what we're doing next. Thank you. So You can see here on the right-hand side, that would be if you have one landing position and you have 8 parking stands, you would need roughly kind of 2 hectares of space, which is about 20,000 square meters. Versus just to the left of that, you can see in the green diagram, we compact everything in such a unique way that we're 80% smaller, and then we can provide those 8 parking stands by having multiple stacked hangars. So we can have hangars stacked on top of hangars. And that's because we've got the vertical airfield in the center, which connects all of those hangars, which enables this kind of greater functionality on a smaller footprint, right? And so it's ultimately the most efficient way to get this done, right? It makes it affordable. That also then means it's very cheap and efficient to operate, which then ultimately means that benefit can be passed on to the consumer to make sure that ticket prices are within reason. So all of this kind of is related, right? So we have to make something which is safe, but also something that's affordable, also that it does actually work in any city location. If you go on to the next slide, please. And I mentioned safety as well, and I think safety. There's many different factors to this, but these kinds of aircraft, they are very powerful, and they have a lot of what we call downwash, right? So you've got kind of roughly, as opposed to a helicopter, which has a very big rotor, which then creates this kind of thrust of air as it's taking off. These have smaller but multiple rotors, and typically they have 4 to 8 on the front and rear wings. And once they're smaller, they do create a lot of thrust, right? Because they are going to take off vertically. And so what we've analyzed and what we've done our simulations with some of the leading OEMs, what we've proven is that if you land and take off just at grade, the amount of downwash and then its outwash is quite large, and that then means you will need even more real estate in order to provide a suitable operation. Now, if you look at the upper half of the image, if you take off in an isolated location on top of an urban airport, our built-in patented technology, we're able to absorb a lot of the energy from that downwash. And also then minimize the outwash, right? And so what that means is it's going to be quieter, but it's also going to be safer. And it also means you'll be able to put this again in a downtown location on less real estate without having to be worried about the effects of the outwash, which can be very extensive. So this is an area which we believe is going to be fundamental to the rollout of vertiports. And so we'd be very happy to share some more of this if that was of interest after this meeting. And the next slide, please. I think here is a repeat of the first one, but if you notice on the right-hand side now, I beg your pardon, we've added these red boxes. Now, those red boxes are our estimation, having done the downwash and outwash analysis, that actually because of the extent of that downwash and outwash, we believe that there'll be more real estate required for a ground-based solution. So actually it's going to be even bigger. And that then means that our solution ends up being roughly 90% smaller as opposed to 80% smaller. So, these are really important factors that we deeply understand, and we've invested millions of dollars and pounds actually into our R&D and our technology. And there's some real benefits here that really need to be understood so that we can integrate these vertiports into towns and cities all across California. And the next slide, please. So I think this is just a summary. It's just reiterating again, real estate prices are, real estate's expensive, right? And so no matter whoever says, real estate is not expensive, whether it's an airport, whether it's downtown, real estate has value. And so if you can do more with less, that's obviously going to be advantageous and more desirable. And that's going to be, in the end, that's going to win the day, right? So the business case has to stack up, the fair prices has to stack up. And so if you can have lower landing charges because you've got a more efficient operation and you're taking up less space and you can provide more capacity, better connectivity, and more intermodal seamless options for people, that in the end is going to win. But it all does boil down to having that compact solution. Now, of course, you can scale. You know, if you have more passengers who are traveling, you can add more hangars. It's a scalable solution. If we go on to the next slide, I'll try and speed up through the next few slides, but I think we're almost done. We can skip over this one. You know, this is all about having enough power and energy on site and using renewables, which we're also developing. If you go on to the next one, please. This is our team. You know, a lot of experience in the built environment, a very strong board, and a lot of experience in working in cities. And the next slide, please. But not only our management team, we're also backed up by our board of advisors. And you see the experience here of our team building airports, big towers in cities, and complex buildings all around the world. And then backed up on the next slide with the advisory board, which is this slide, which includes 8 of the leading OEMs, which is really important. So we get that intelligence, you know, directly from the vehicle manufacturers as to what the vehicles need to operate at their best. So we have a lot of experience. And on the last slide, I think is the same. Our very extensive advisory board members that enable us to do what we do. Thank you so much for your time, and happy to take any questions that you might have.
We're a little pressed for time. Do we have any questions? Huh? Okay, any public comments or questions? Yeah, I can take one of the questions from online. Carol Moore.
Yes, I have a quick question. Thank you for your presentation. I find it pretty fascinating. Who manages the air traffic for these types of operations? Thank you.
So yeah, so it'll be a combination between the regulators, a bit like, you know, in the same way that we have air traffic control for general aviation and the aircraft that we fly all across America. It'll be an extension of that system. So when we built the first one in the UK, we had to slot all of our flights with civil aviation. We had to get permission from civil aviation to release each aircraft. So it's kind of a miniaturization of the existing system, but it's all about integrating, you know, more aircraft at a lower altitude into that system, so there's full visibility. And these aircraft are, you know, they're all tracked. You know, we've actually built a model where we demonstrate how, you know, each aircraft is tracked from its takeoff position, its flight, and its landing position. So, you know, aviation is, you know, and particularly in the US, is the safest form of transport there is on this earth. And all of those safety features are being extended into this sector. And so we're working with the regulators in multiple districts and with the FAA to make sure that this is managed and regulated in the most effective and safe way.
We're going to go, thank you very much for that answer, to Member Lilienthal from City of Hemet.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Can you speak to the efficacy of line queuing and, like, you know, drop off and take off, parking lots, and like maybe something like TSA security?
Yeah, sure. So there's quite a lot there. I think these aircraft, their capacity is, you know, is going to vary from 4 to maybe 6 people. So having more aircraft is going to be important in order for the airport to be viable. But we're not talking kind of, you know, we're not talking like a typical airport with hundreds and thousands of people. But it is going to be important, as you say, to have intermodal connectivity. So when people arrive in a taxi, an electric car, or even an e-bike, to have the ability for them to be dropped off. And we showed that on the first image that we had on the screen. You've got to build that in. But because we offer a very compact solution, it affords that additional space for some of those features, because otherwise you have to add those on to the incumbent solution, which obviously is going to be much, much bigger. In terms of security, We think there will be some level of security, but it really does depend. It will depend in the US from state to state, and obviously it will depend country to country and what the regulators end up deciding. But there is a point of discussion there, because having security equipment then adds cost to the operations. So I think there's a lot of debate in the industry as to how much security is going to be required. And also, if you're in Europe, if you're flying from, I don't know, from Austria to Italy, how does that process work? And so I think that's what the regulators are trying to figure out. What's the best way to do that? We're cognizant of some of those questions that are still being understood and being explored. But we've built in that functionality into our vertiports as well, so that you've got that. If you need to have security, you can plug it in. If you don't need to have that functionality, you don't need to have it. But we also think it's really important, as we showed in Coventry, to have that familiarity, right? This is a new type of transport. It's a new type of infrastructure. Most people don't fly in helicopters. So in order to provide that familiarity with having having a cafe to buy a coffee, having a seating area, having some exposure to retail, I think some of those things are very calming to travelers, and that experience, I think, is going to be important, with a seamless drop-off also.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Maybe if you can touch on real quick the range of these aircraft.
Of course, yeah. So the range is also going to vary, but the OEMs at the moment are looking at around 60 to maybe 80 miles. Now I can't really tell you what that is I can't give an example in California. Maybe that's like, I don't know, is that Los Angeles to San Diego? I'm not sure. But 60 to 80 miles on a single charge. And these aircraft fly at around 200 miles per hour, so they're pretty fast. So, if I take a UK example, a 100-mile London to Birmingham drive would take kind of 2 hours and 20 minutes with all the speed restrictions. To fly London to Birmingham, which is 100 miles by road, would take about 20 minutes, right? So one of the biggest advantages here is time saving, so passengers can save time, and be more productive, right? Instead of sitting in your car stuck in traffic, you can be more productive, get where you want to go quicker, so long as the infrastructure is in the right place. And it can only be in the right place if it's compact and affordable, and can fit in either on a parking lot or in an empty parking lot, but somewhere that's convenient to where you need to get to.
Thank you very much. Again, great presentation, and thank you for it.
Vice Judge, could I just add a few final points before we close this item out? I'll be quick. So just to answer your regulatory based questions here in the United States will most likely be, or will be addressed when we have the FAA come and speak in June or August. And I also wanted to just correct a statement that I made earlier that Van Nuys Airport was looking at advanced air mobility connections to LAX. It's actually Oxnard Airport. Van Nuys may be doing that, but I don't have any confirmation, but Oxnard is actively looking at advanced air mobility. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead.
I just, Kurt Hagman, I'm also set on the Ontario International Airport Board Authority. So I've been texting my CEO. Please reach out to him. We'd love to get this in our master plan right now.
Great.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Right. And thank you again. Moving on to number 10, Governor's budget update. We're going to call on our Manager of Legislation, Kevin Gahuli.
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair. Kevin Gahuli, Manager of the Legislative Affairs Department at SCAG. In his January budget this year, Governor Newsom proposed a $291 billion budget with $1.2 billion in cuts for housing programs, including a $300 million cut to the RTIP program. The RTIP program is the only program specifically and exclusively designed to implement the region's sustainable community strategy. California is in the midst of a housing crisis. Simultaneously, the governor and the legislature have set very ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, of which vehicle emissions are the largest contributors. Cutting RTIP funding threatens our ability as cities, counties, tribal governments, and transit agencies to address the housing crisis while meeting the state's important climate goals. SCAG entered an MOU with HCD for $237 million in RTIP funds last summer. Since then, SCAG has suballocated and awarded $192 million to cities, counties, and tribal governments across the region for projects that accelerate housing production and implement the GHG reducing strategies contained in Connect SoCal. These projects are crucial for supporting our efforts to achieve our RENA goal of 1.34 million housing units and our GHG reduction targets. Reducing or delaying the funding will compromise the program's integrity and have severe negative impacts on our cities and counties across Southern California and the entire state. Both the Assembly Committee on Budget and the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee met last week and had hearings on the governor's proposal. That was on Tuesday, January 23rd, marking the start of the legislature's budget process. In preparation for budget hearings, SCAG authored a budget advocacy letter in response to the governor's January budget proposal, including our request that REAP 2.0 funding be protected, which was distributed to the budget committees in advance of their hearing. Legislative leadership, our Southern California delegation, and key stakeholders, including CalCog, the League of Cities, CSAC, the Big Four MPOs, and the sub-regional COGs, and our region's 6 county transportation commissions also received a copy of the advocacy letter. In addition, talking points were distributed to members of the Assembly and Senate budget committees representing the SCAG region, whose districts contain projects funded by REAP 2.0 dollars. Lastly, SCAG had our Sacramento representatives, Cruise Strategies, provide in-person testimony during the public comment periods at those budget meetings. Since the hearing, SCAG has met with key legislative staff to the Senate President Pro Tem and to the Senate Budget Committee. Staff to Speaker Rivas's office and the Assembly Budget Committee is scheduled for this afternoon. We are in the process of setting up strike teams with members of the Regional Council to meet with legislators, and we anticipate this being a primary advocacy request at our upcoming Sacramento Summit on March 19 and March 20. In the meantime, we have developed an advocacy toolkit that we're making available to every SCAG elected official after today's Regional Council meeting. Part of this toolkit is a sample letter. Please modify this template and send it to legislative leadership and your own local legislators to amplify the critical REAP 2.0 program. With our collective efforts, we are hopeful that we can protect the REAP program's investments, and we thank you very much for your help in sending that message up to Sacramento. I'm available, Mr. Vice Chair, for any questions from your committee members.
Thank you. Okay, do I have to read this thing again? Okay. Okay. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? We'll go within in the room, Supervisor Spiegel.
Yes, just real quick. I always appreciate these updates. We're not always on the same page, but it's nice to know where the organization is. Can we get a copy? I know things change up until the time you come speak. There's things that are going on and changing, but after the meeting, can you send that out, which you sent, so that we can pass this on to the appropriate people? Because I tried to take notes, but you're reading fast. So
Absolutely. Be
Thank
happy
you.
to send that out to everybody.
And you'll be sending out the toolkit,
this afternoon.
so maybe both together?
Yeah,
Perfect.
you
Thank
got
you.
it. Thank you. Unless there are any more questions. All right.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Now we're going to go on to Chair's Report. I'd like to welcome new members, Jeanette Burns from the Morongo Band of Mission Indians Tribal Representative, and Marlon Regisford, Deputy District Director, Planning and Local Assistance for Caltrans District 7. We will have a joint policy committee next month on March 4th. SCAG Equity Board member training. SCAG is hosting an equity training for Regional Council and Policy Committee members on February 22nd. The training will be virtual, led by Charles Brown, consultant from Equitable Cities. More information will be shared, but please feel free to reach out to our staff if interested. Metrolink report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. San Clemente, unless you've been living under a rock, you don't know. You should know The Metrolink and the Amtrak southbound from in the San Clemente Pier area has been closed for the last week and will continue indefinitely on that. Weekday Orange County Inland Empire trains operating only as far south as Laguna de Gal Station until further notice, while weekend trains will operate to and from San Juan Capistrano. The Metrolink track and engineering teams are working collaboratively with OCTA and the City of San Clemente officials to ensure right-of-way is safe so that service can be restored. As a reminder, OCTA is currently working with consultants on the South Coast Rail Infrastructure Study and Alternative Concepts Analysis. The study's purpose is to develop near-term strategies to protect the 7-mile coastal line in place, while a second long-term study will be completed, which will include the potential for relocating the rail line. On Sunday, February 14th, Metrolink will offer free rides system-wide, including the Aero Service in honor of Transit Equity Day, held annually on the birthday of civil rights pioneer Rosa Parks. Metrolink trains will operate on a regular weekend schedule. The Metrolink recognition of Transit Equity Day demonstrates a continued commitment to fairness and mobility for all. Metrolink is a safe system, safe and affordable transit option for Southern California who may be struggling financially. It offers 50% discounts for passengers with valid California Electronic Benefit Cards or EBT cards. The Amtrak or Metrolink's Student Venture Pass pilot program provides free system-wide access to anyone with a student ID, while expanded Antelope Valley service introduced in October is connecting riders between Lancaster and Los Angeles who operate outside the traditional 8 to 5 work window with new economic, educational, and social opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Staff report.
Thank you, Vice Chair. A couple items I'll mention briefly. The Transportation Committee, at our meeting in April, we'll be having an item on the agenda specifically dedicated for the election of the new chair and vice chair for the 2024-25 calendar year. If you wish to nominate yourself or someone on the committee for the positions of chair or vice chair, please follow up with our clerk of the board, Maggie Aguilar, and submit the name no later than 5 p.m. on Thursday, March 28th. I believe an email will go out signifying notice for the call for nominations as well. The term of the newly elected chair and vice chair will commence upon the adjournment of the General Assembly business meeting on May 2nd. And lastly, our SCAG scholarship program recently opened up this week. Applications for the 2024 SCAG scholarship program are open. The program offers a $4,000 scholarship award for 7 high school or community college students from the SCAG region, particularly those interested in pursuing planning or public service related careers. We've partnered with CTF to provide 2 additional scholarships to award to applicants as well, and we appreciate the partnership with CTF. And that concludes my update, Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update.
Mr. Vice Chair, may I make a correction?
Sure.
The Transit Equity Day is February 4th, not 14th.
Thank you very much. Do we have any announcements for members? Linda Molina.
I actually don't have an announcement, but just a request. The chair reports are very informational. Is it possible to get them in writing in our packets? Because it's a lot of note taking and it's information we can take back to our cities. Is that something in the future?
They've been informed in follow-up, they could get that to you.
Okay.
We can work on
Okay.
we can work on including that in follow-up email.
Yeah, that's great information to have. Thank you so
Understood.
much.
Thank you so much.
Supervisor Spiegel. No, thank you. All right, then we're going to adjourn. Thank you for your participation. The meeting is now adjourned.